enough. And so generally it's too much. And then because it's too much, it gets wasted. That's basically the byproduct of greed. Greed means waste. It's like if a person's very greedy, then he gets all this fat, which is just like waste that he's carrying around with him. He can't use that nutrition or protein or fat or whatever it is that's going in. He's eating it, and then he can't use it, so then it just becomes waste. He's walking around with 50 kgs of waste hanging off his frame. Whereas if he just ate what he needed, then that wouldn't get wasted. That could be, you could go and give that to homeless people. They say that the average European or Westerner, if you take their plate and you take 2/3 of the plate off, that's what they actually need. 1/3 is what you need. And the other 2/3 is just overindulgence. And because you can't digest, once you go past what you actually need to eat, it sits in the body and the body can't digest it, so it turns into a thing called ama. And ama is like a kind of sticky, tar-like substance, and it lines the artery of the body. So then the heart is trying to pump the blood through. And because all the ama is stuck on the inside of the veins, it's much more difficult for the heart to get the blood to go through. So then the heart starts to become strained. So then it starts becoming unhealthy. And then eventually the karma is, because you've been killing so many other things, now you're going to kill yourself. If you don't eat, if you fast, one time when Srila Prabhupada was sick, he wasn't eating. And he says, I am not eating and I am living, and you are eating and you are dying. And he was meaning that because people are overeating, it's killing them. It's shortening the duration of life, because you're only allotted a certain quota. So if you're allotted, say, 5.5 million grains of rice, and you eat 5.5 million of rice by the time you're 50, then you've used up your allotted quota. So if you breathe in a more measured way, and you eat and you drink and you live in a more measured way, which basically means living in the mode of goodness. There's 3 modes you can live in: ignorance, where you're ignoring God; passion, where you consider yourself God; and mode of goodness, where you recognize that you're a servant of God. And then you just take your allotted quota. Oh, God has decided to give me this situation with this amount of money, with these particular people. Okay, let me embrace that as His mercy and make the most of it, rather than always looking over the fence at the greener grass. The grass is always greener on the over the fence. Problem is, all the other people on the other side of the fence, they're looking at your grass and they're thinking your grass is greener. One man is married and he's looking at the other man's wife and thinking, actually, I think she'd be better. And the other man who's married to her is thinking, actually, maybe they. So everyone is becoming very confused. So killing is forbidden. Man can't create life, so he doesn't have the right to take it. And every living entity has a right to the food that's been allotted to him. So what's happening right now is men are interfering with the resurrection. So Krishna is the enjoyer. We eat whatever Krishna likes. So Krishna, we eat remembrance. Even the snake. Everyone's Krishna, right? Give. In modern days, people are communistic. The idea is nice. If you drink with the cups of Krishna, then Krishna will accept you. And also the situation that we're in, he understands that. Understands also the cow as a farmer in its last life. So all that's taken into account. But Shama Sundar was here a few days ago, and he was saying even if the milk's not offered, he says, his idea on it, anyway, his take, he's like head of the cow ministry in Europe, is that the substance milk is so auspicious, just like the urine and the dung of the cow, that it has this amazing potency. It's been arranged by God that we have this milk, and it's very good for our health. But if you took meat, even if you offered the meat, like one time I had an operation on my sinuses, and they brought some ice cream, so I offered the ice cream, and I ate it. As soon as I ate the ice cream, it was like going down in an elevator. I could feel myself, and I thought, there's something getting this that shouldn't be in it. Now, I'd offered it and everything, but when I looked on the ingredients, it had eggs in it. And having been vegetarian that time, about 5 or 6 years, And immediately it went in. I could feel the consciousness going down straight away. Not from the milk that was in it, but from the eggs that were in it, you see. So eggs are considered liquid flesh, the menstrual period of a chicken, so definitely not an auspicious thing to eat. And flesh also. So luckily I've never managed to eat a piece of meat by accident. But if you did, and you've been vegetarian for a while, then you'd feel your consciousness go down, because it's just a very tamasic energy that it's giving off, you know, the flesh of an animal that was slaughtered for money. Because you could eat roadkill. You could say, well, it's dead anyway, I didn't kill it, so I don't get any karma. But just the actual substance, the energy of the meat that it gives off, when it went into your system, everything would go down, the consciousness would go right down, you know. Well, there's some contention on that. Shiva Maharaj, he'll only drink milk from cows. Otherwise he won't touch it, you know. He calls it blood milk from supermarkets. So that's definitely a higher standard. Srila Prabhupada's standard wasn't that, but Shiva Maharaj was saying that Srila Prabhupada was establishing a movement at that time, and he gave everyone that mandate, start cows, cow protection, you know. And 50 years later, we're still like, oh, I'll just offer it. You know, it's like the easy way to go out. And the vegans have definitely got a point, you know. It's very, very cruel. So the best solution would be to get cows. And if a person is vegan, then trying to get a vegan, because they'd have to believe in God, they'd have to believe that God was a person, that the cow was God's favorite animal, that he liked milk, that when you offered it, you know, it's a whole, you know, go and read the Srimad Bhagavatam. We talk about this. It's just there's so many things that have to be already in place for that type of an argument. So the better thing is just, yeah, you're right, it is cruel. And what we need to do is, because if everybody goes vegan, that's also cruel, because we have no cows, and that's cruel as well. You don't need cows anymore. Maybe have the odd pet cow. What do you think? It's cruel, isn't it, to not do that? So the ideal solution is to have kill-free milk. And then when the farmers start catching on that you can make more money by not killing the cow, because you can sell the milk 3 times the price. And, you know, most people, unless they're really poor, most people, if you said, would you mind paying £3 for 2 litres of milk rather than £1.50 or £5? Knowing that by doing that, you're ensuring the welfare of the cows that have produced the milk. Most people will be like, yeah. So it's just a question of time. I mean, when Srila Prabhupada came, everybody thought being a vegetarian was weird. So that was a huge step forward. And what the finding is now, people who are vegetarian are also generally going vegan, and it's usually a young lady, and then a boyfriend has to go vegan, and then the kids come along, and then they're also. So you quadruple the number in 5 or 10 years. So it's a huge increase exponentially. And then the farmers are going to have to look at that and think, okay, well, if we want to stay in business, we're going to have to start protecting the cows and sell the milk that way, you know. Any questions, Shayananda? Okay, yeah. Anybody else, any questions on not killing flies and seeing mice as your son?
I was going to ask about these animals. I mean, are all animals like degraded souls that used to get into the bodies, all?
Yeah.
And once you end up in the kind of animal kingdom, I guess, are you able to rise up out of them, or is that you for eternity?
When you fall into the animal species, it's like being on an elevator, an escalator. You know, you go up those escalators, and then you're standing on the step. And if you don't do anything daft, you'll get to the top and you can go and buy yourself a pair of shoes or whatever it is you want, you know. But if you're messing around, well, actually, what happens is you fall into an animal species, and then automatically you start going up the escalator. Then you go from a dog to a tiger to a cow, and then a human form of life. That will just automatically take place. You don't have to turn up at church once a week or help old ladies, or if you're a cow, help an old cow across the road or help a dog. You just have to be a dog, because dogs can't really be psycho. They're just what they are, you know. And so they just do their dog stuff, and then they go to the next species, then the next, and then they get the human. Now, in the human form of life, you can really blow it badly because you've reached the top of the escalator, and then you can go and do something sensible, or you can turn around and jump down the escalator way for a bit of fun and land at the bottom in the body of a centipede, and then you're back on your way up again. But it takes a long time to get back up. Once you fall down the escalator, it takes millions and millions of years before you get a human form of life again, you know. So once you've got one, you want to at least do a little bit of spiritual stuff so that at least you're going to get a human form in your next life. Because if you lose the human form of life and you drop down, any morals or philosophy that you've accumulated in this lifetime, it's all lost. Because, you know, when you're in the body of a bug, you haven't got the capacity to think about stuff other than just, oh, look, there's a breadcrumb, you know, and you're off over to get the breadcrumb. And that's it. That's as far. Your world has just shrunk down to such a tiny existence. You can't contemplate these lofty ideas that human beings can do, but not necessarily will do, you know. So if you blow it and you lose the human form of life, that is considered the most dangerous type of fear. Because the animal kingdom is just full of fear. Everyone is, and it is pretty heavy. I was with, we were at the Lake District the other week, and we're out in nature. And I was just saying to my wife, actually, the material world's pretty heavy because as soon as you get old in the animal kingdom, you're just food for somebody. You don't see like an old folks' home for snails, right? That are just chilling out because they can't go as fast and they're already pretty slow. They're just fair game then to any of their predators. As you get older, you slow down more, you're less able to defend yourself, so you just get eaten straight away, you know? So nature's merciless, it's ruthless. It's only when you come into the human form of life that you've got a chance of trying to be nice, you know, and considerate. But if you abuse that facility, then all those finer things will be taken away from you and you'll be back out there. Everyone will just be tearing each other apart, you know.
And there's always time to change for maybe someone that's had things that's happened in the past that are not very proud of, and maybe they will be judged for it, you know what I mean? Obviously, if you start doing the right thing, turn your kind of willing your life over to the care of God, the care of Krishna,
Yeah.
you're able to be maybe not fully like let off the hook, but
Yeah.
kind of accepted.
Yeah, you want to get to the stage of being steady so that there's no chance of, because there's always a chance of making a big mistake, you know. So as devotees, we read the books and we commit to it. We think, okay, I'm going to start doing this. This makes sense, and it starts to all fall into place. We start being vegetarian. We start controlling ourselves sensually. Suddenly, everything gets a lot better for us. You know, we even feel happier, and we're like, wow, this is great. I'm not even so afraid of dying anymore now. You know, so everything starts to go right. But at that point, if we become complacent, there's a 75% chance that you'll discontinue the process. So if you have 100 people read the books, think it's brilliant, they all start chanting, you come back 10 years later, there's only 25 of them still doing it because they just become distracted by the material energy, deviated, discouraged, whatever it is. And they've got the bead bag, but it's in the cupboard collecting dust, you know. Shishikoni Taimaya Po Shashiki Jai. So I'll leave you with an interesting analogy, Jordan. When you hear this analogy, you'll never be the same again. So you may want to leave before I say it because there'll be no turning back after you've heard this. There's a time of the year in one of these tropical countries where eggs that have got turtles in them catch, and the turtle runs towards the sea. And it only has, the little turtle only has like 2 or 3 minutes to get to the sea. And all the birds know that this is the day when the eggs hatch. And they're all just flying around waiting. And as the little turtle is running towards the sea, they flip it over and then eat it alive. Because once they can get into the underside. So the turtle's in a very precarious position. So when you get a book and you read it by Srila Prabhupada and you think, wow, okay, this is it. That's the egg hatched. And now you've got just a very short time to get into the sea, or you'll get flipped over by Maya and eaten alive. So once you get into Krishna consciousness, the race is on. You've got to get steady and get in that ocean as quickly as you possibly can. So there's no time for messing about. You don't see the little turtles when they're running saying, oh, did you hear about Freddy the Turtle? Oh, he's gone right off the wall. He's taking spice and everything. They're not standing around chanting, right? They're just all, never mind, just get into the ocean, So they haven't got time to mess about. That's the main thing. Once you're in the ocean, then you're safe. The birds can't touch you. And then you can think about other things, But you have to get steady, first of all, in Krishna consciousness, which means 75% of the nasty stuff in the heart that is not good for us, that has to be gotten rid of. And then when there's only 25% left, it's not enough to sway us off the path anymore. And that 25% will reduce to nothing very quickly. Once you've got most of it out, the other stuff will go very quickly. But once you've 75% out, you're steady. You start off being physically steady, you're in the right place at the right time doing the right thing. Then you go verbally steady, you say the right thing at the right time, in the right place. And then eventually you become mentally steady. Then you're that's Madhyama Adhikari. That's when you're... But that doesn't come so easy. You have to work. You have to run hard for a while. Yes, so there's a famous prayer. He says, there was a devotee, and he left. He took some money and he left. And then later on, this person came to see Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada was giving a lecture, and this person was dragging himself across the room, And all the time while he was giving the lecture, he was like dragging. And then finally he got to Srila Prabhupada and he paid his obeisance. And the devotee said, oh, look, Prabhupada, that was that devotee that stole from you and ran away. And Prabhupada said, yes, I forgave them, but Krishna didn't. So they lost one of their arms and they lost one of their legs because they used their arm to steal and they used the leg to run away. So Krishna came down heavy on them, So, yeah, definitely once Krishna gets involved in the equation, things won't be the same again. And he will arrange sometimes the situation to be very miserable so that eventually there's no other resource than to just take shelter completely of him, Oh, there was one devotee. When he first came, he was really, really fired up like anything. He was like always leading the kirtans. He was number one on Sankirtan. His dhoti was so saffron, you had to put sunglasses on to look at him. He was like, and he knew like 50,000 slokas, and he was totally fired up, And then he was selling oil paintings, because at that time we were short of money. We were selling oil paintings in the evening. And that's a dangerous thing to do, because sometimes you're on your own in a house with somebody, some lady looking at the paintings. And one thing led to the next. And he was too embarrassed to come back. So we didn't see him for years. And then one day he turned up at the temple. I saw him, says, "Oh, how's it going?" He goes, "I was watching a program last night about old people, and I just remembered I'm going to die." And sure enough, next week he was on the roof fixing the aerial, and he slipped. He fell off the roof and he died. And some devotees said that's what happened there was because he started getting into really heavy sinful activity again. So Krishna brought him back. He came to the temple, took prasadam, saw the devotees, saw the deities, freed him of all the karma, and then took him out. So he couldn't get into any more nonsense. So once Krishna gets involved. But from our side, we don't want to go the hard way. We want to go the easy way. And the easy way is run like crazy. Give it everything, every last iota of, every fiber of enthusiasm and determination you've got. Sum it up and employ it in your endeavor to connect. And once you connect with Krishna, and you're conscious of him, and you're aware that he's there, and your relationship with him, then you're okay. Otherwise, there's always an element of danger. Any other questions or comments? It's interesting because if you approach Lord Narayan, he's all-knowing. So because he's all-knowing, it's hard to have interaction with him, because you can imagine approaching God and you say, "Oh, I got you this as a surprise, dairy milk from Tesco's, only £4.99. But God knew. So Narayan's like, "Yeah, I know. I knew millions of years ago you were going to give me this box of chocolates." But with Krishna doesn't, he puts aside his Godhead. He's the Supreme Personality, but the Godhead isn't really there. He's just a beautiful person, So when you do that to Krishna, he's like, "Wow, far out." And you interact with him as a person rather than interact with him as God, So the process of Krishna consciousness says we want to avoid the mechanistical aspect of Krishna's creation, and we want to access the personal aspect of Krishna and that personal relationship. And we want to be in a relationship with Krishna. So we have to do some work to get to that stage. Anatta Nivritti, and then eventually comes Atta Pravritti. Atta Pravritti means you start taking on positive things, meditations, contemplations, relationship with Krishna, because you've got rid of all the nonsense, So we want to get rid of the nonsense as quickly as possible, the unwanted things as quickly as possible. But the problem with unwanted things, don't know if you've ever noticed this, when you're trying to clear your house out, you look in the cupboard and you're thinking, "I've got so much stuff," and you're looking and you're thinking, "I've never wore that for years, and I'm never going to wear it," So you start trying to throw it out, and then you think, "But it could come in handy, if I'm doing a messy job, and I just need a pair of trousers that are messy anyway. I could keep it for like a painting job, So as you go to throw unwanted things out, then you start thinking, well, maybe they're not. And that's the stage of, it's called Anatta Nivritti. It's when you're supposed to get rid of things and realize they're unwanted. But the problem is, you think, well, is it really unwanted? Or, could it be useful? And then you get stuck in Anatta Nivritti rather than just get rid of everything that is not essentially necessary. I'm preaching to myself now. I've got this cupboard in my house, and I need to address it. And practically, I can't find anything because there's that much stuff in there. And that's what we live in now. We live in a society of hoarders. People hoard things. They accumulate so much stuff because they've all got loads of money. I mean, people never had enough money to buy stuff years ago. They just had the jacket they were wearing. And it wasn't like they had a jacket for this and a jacket for that. They just had a jacket, and that was it. Bas. one jacket. They wore it at the wedding, they wore it at the funeral, they wore it at this, they wore it at that. Now we've got so much stuff. And achihara, we accumulate, and priyasascha, it's all wasted. We over endeavor for things that are unnecessary. So Krishna consciousness is cleansing out all the desires that have been imposed upon us from our society, our environment. We become conditioned by the environment to have certain desires, to think we'd like things. We see somebody going down the road with something, we think, oh, that's really nice, I'd like one of those. And so that desire just drops into the heart. And unless you're practicing spiritual life, when these desires drop into the heart, they stay there. But if you're practicing spiritual life and you're chanting and praying and reading, then you can cleanse away these things as they try to settle on the heart. But if you slacken off in practicing Krishna consciousness, then you're exposed to an environment where this dust of desires, they're just dropping down all the time. And you accumulate layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of desires. And it's those desires that will take you back again. You'll have this bucket list of desires. And at the time of death, there'll be so many things that you still want to do. So you'll have to come back again into the material world. They did a documentary once on people that live in Hollywood. And the average house in Hollywood is $300 million. So they were like knocking on the guy's door. Hello, nice house. Are you happy in your house? Well, it's a nice house, but the guy down the road, his house is 400 million. Now, if I had that, I'd be happy, So they go down the road and knock on the guy's door, 400 million. Yeah, it's good, but this guy around the corner, his house is worth $500 million. Now, if I had that. So no one is satisfied. No matter how much you get, you always want more. So if you can't be satisfied with 3 paces of land, you won't be satisfied with the 3 worlds. But to do that, you have to be able to control the senses. And the main sense to control is the mind. Conquer the mind. And if you're wondering, well, what exactly is the mind? I mean, we talk about the mind, but sometimes I'm thinking this and sometimes I'm thinking that. Maybe, is that me or is that just my mind, So one easy way to tell the difference between you and the mind is if I said, just stare at the tip of my finger for 1 hour and I'll give you £1 million. And it's okay for the first 30 seconds. Wow, £1 million, fantastic. Then after like 30 seconds, that's when you notice you've got a mind, because the mind's saying, oh, come on, what's going on in the corner of the room over there? What? Just no one's going to know. Just have a quick look, and you can look back at it, but just there's something going. Somebody's got a red dress on or something. What's going on, And that's the mind. It's always like taunting him, and then the intelligence is like, you kidding? 1 million? Forget it. So if the intelligence is weak, then the mind pulls it away. So we have to strengthen the intelligence so that we just keep it. No, this is important. This is the human form of life. We're going back to Krishna. I don't care about the ice cream. Just keep, or whatever it is, that's pulling you this way, that way, the next way. Once the mind is conquered, then we've got control. Then we can actually pursue the goal. So the first part of Krishna consciousness is becoming regulated. You get up at the right time, you do this at that time, you eat at this time, you eat this much at this time, then you do this, then you do that. Everything's regulated. Like being in the army. We're at war with Maya, actually.
adjust whenever it's needed, like so, like in specific situations. I have the same sense.
Yeah, Srila Prabhupada said the highest principle was to save yourself. So if you're in the river and and your whole family are in the river drowning, then you could go over and say, "Oh, it's terrible." You're trying to help everybody, but you're drowning as well. So you've got a choice of either drowning with everybody else or getting out the river. But to get out the river, you've got to just like push everything else aside. Then once you're established on firm ground, then you can throw a rope. You can try and pull the people out. Otherwise, the compassion is inappropriate. Of course, in the association of devotees, we're developing loving relationships. Prabhupada said we should cooperate, and cooperate is the bare minimum. Obviously, if we can develop appreciation for each other and love each other, and feel very fortunate to be in the association of devotees and not take that association for granted, then that's the best thing. But in the beginning, it may be that you're trying to become steady and focused on Krishna, so that becomes your main objective, that you have your sadhana, you read for an hour, you chant your 16 rounds, you do your service, you work hard, you firmly establish that. And then if there's time for living relationships, then you can have those living relationships, but not outside of, and not at the risk of skimping on your reading and your service and everything else that you're doing. There has to be firmly established. It's the foundation. And sometimes with devotees, they're not so into chanting and they're not so into doing like hard service, so they think, well, I'll just hang around with the devotees and just chat with them, and we'll just have good relationships and we'll be friendly, and I'll get by with that. So that becomes like a kind of a cheating thing. Then I'm trying to look for the easy way out. And also, there's 3 different types of people that achieve perfection. Some just by hearing, some by studying, and some by preaching. Chaitanya Charan was explaining, Krishna's got such a loving heart, so he accommodates everybody. So for some people, it's very difficult for them to do more than just hear. And if that's all they can do, then they go to the planets where the pious dwell. But if that is all that they can do, but if they could do more, and they're doing that out of laziness, then Krishna's like, okay, well, if you're not going to, I'm going to be very loving and open-hearted to you, but if you're going to try and exploit that, then it's going to work out bad for you. But if you're just trying the best that you can, and that is the best that you can do, then Krishna's okay with that. If it's the best that you can do, it's like, okay, if that's all you can do is just hear about me. But if you could do more, if you could really study, or you could preach and really spread the message, but you're not doing it because you're lazy, then Krishna's like, okay, well, why? I'm giving you everything I can. I'm bending over backwards for you. Why don't you do the same? Why don't you reciprocate? And we don't always know until we try which type of devotee we are, according to how we're conditioned. We just have to try the best that we can, and Krishna will accommodate that. ISKCON Govinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. Go to Premanandi. Hari Bol. All of you ki jai.